that you have?
You might have to do it now that you're the host, but I already programmed them in there, so they're
So I'll
1
just
and
click
2.
launch poll. Okay,
Yeah.
I can do that. Great.
It's recording to the cloud now. I just went ahead and started recording just so we don't forget.
Sounds good. I'll wait a little bit to, because sometimes if you like prepare the stream too early, it'll disconnect before it actually goes live, I found, so on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I'll just wait a little bit more.
Yeah, we can wait till probably like 3 minutes out, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Dusun, we're going to be streaming live to Facebook too, and that's where we think probably the bulk of people will be. So Robin, who's one of our co-hosts, she'll be monitoring the Facebook chat just to make sure that we get all the questions.
Oh, great. Sounds awesome.
And if people just aren't asking questions today, I will ask questions.
What is the average sort of age or education focus of the attendees?
Well, it's hard to. I think it'll be adults and I probably there'll be some kids watching with their parents, you know.
Okay, great.
I mean, but I think it'll mostly be adults and teenagers.
Okay, great. I have a tendency to talk in a very simplistic set of words so everyone can sort of understand, but sometimes I get pushback from very scientific crowds saying that they would like more jargon, which I didn't expect.
No, I think, and I think, you know, like for example, people might not know what RNA is, you know, stuff like that. So
totally, yeah, I'm always happy to simplify stuff down.
I don't know if I even know what RNA is, so I would appreciate a very simple explanation.
Yeah, don't put me on the spot. I mean, I know vaguely what it is.
I barely know what RNA is.
Oh, no!
The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know much. Don't worry.
We'll ask the audience. We'll be like, does anyone here know what RNA is? Because we don't.
And then will the recording be made available like publicly afterwards?
Yep.
Okay, great.
And we'll send it to you too in case you want to post it on any YouTube channels. The recording's completely open access, so anyone can post it anywhere.
Perfect. Okay, that sounds great.
So Sam, have you always lived in Newton?
I actually live I live in West Wichita, which Wichita is the bigger city that's south of Newton. So I live near Wichita.
Okay.
But
awesome.
I've always lived around here. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, it looks like Michael's here. He's one of our friends from NLM. Can you promote him to panelist?
Sure.
Also, I recently gave a talk in a similar setting, but I was not, there were some things that I was asked to avoid. For example, I couldn't say the word vaccine.
Oh, say the word vaccine. We love vaccines.
Okay. Yeah, okay, great. A lot of the work on Eterna right now is focused, hi Michael, is focused around vaccine development against COVID.
Great.
But I just wanted to be sensitive to any preferences on words being used, but good to know. Huge fan of vaccines, obviously, so you get to know.
Yeah, I've been talking about, I mean, the posts I've been making have talked about COVID and vaccines, you know. So I will get the
And then, so Michael, Tess agreed to monitor the Zoom chat, and I know Robin's monitoring the Facebook. So Michael, if you're okay with it, would you try to monitor maybe the Zoom chat as well during the question session?
Yeah, sure thing.
Awesome. I like the all of us background.
I found
I'll
a
do the
different
same.
one. Yeah.
I think I have the same one. Hold on. I really need to spice it up. I use the same Zoom background all the time.
There you go.
What did we title this again?
I'll put it in the chat. I gave it kind of a long title because, believe it or not, we did some A/B testing and longer titles resonate more with people. I didn't expect that, but I guess people have a better idea of like what it is, so they're more
Yeah,
likely to come.
that's good to note. Yeah.
Okay, let me grab our really long title. I think we called it "Help Develop RNA-Based Medicines Online Q&A with the Newton Public Library in Newton, Kansas."
RNA-based
Just put it in the chat.
medicines online Q&A. Okay, great. Join scientist do soon. Is it do or do? Do soon?
Yeah, that's right.
SciStarter and us talk in Q&A about research. Okay.
Great. Are we live on Facebook now?
Not quite yet. Do you want me to go live a few minutes early or just?
Yeah, I think so. We're about 3 minutes out, so it doesn't hurt.
Okay, let's see. All right.
And while we're doing that, I just wanted to thank everybody for not only our attendees, but all of our panelists and people who helped put this on. These events are my favorite part of the work I get to do. So, and thank you especially to Doosoon from Eterna and Sam from the Newton Public Library.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, hello, everyone. We're on our Facebook page now. Probably people are starting to filter in on the Facebook. We'll kick off in a couple of minutes here, I guess, at 1 o'clock. Let me get that.
Thank you especially
to.
I'm going to start a watch party on the Facebook page.
Okay. And here's the live. Right.
Put the link in the chat.
I'll put the link in the chat.
Oh, awesome.
There. And share it with some of our local community message boards.
For those of our attendees who are just coming in, please feel free to put either on the Facebook comments, or if you're in the Zoom room, feel free to put in the Zoom chat as well. You know where you're calling in from. Feel free to put your zip code so we can help track, who we're reaching and our impact. If you have something you're excited to learn about today, feel free to comment that as well. We're happy to hear it. And yeah, I think we're 1 minute out. So we're going to get started in just 1 minute. And we have it's also live on Facebook for the people who are in the Zoom room with us. So if you want to share this Facebook link with any family and friends who couldn't make it into Zoom today, feel free to share that. We'd love to get the word out.
Good.
All right, we're right at 2 o'clock. So since we have so much to get through, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Caroline Nickerson. I'm on the SciStarter team. This event is presented as part of the Citizen Science Meets Summer Reading series. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because we prepared some slides to share with you all. Citizen Science Meets Summer Reading is supported by the network of the National Library of Medicine and the All of Us Research Program, as well as SciStarter. And the theme of summer reading is Imagine Your Story. Today's event focuses on developing RNA-based medicines with the Newton Public Library. So our friends at Newton Public Library in Kansas kindly agreed to help MC this event and to bring their community in, which we're really grateful for. And we also have the Eterna project on the line, specifically Doosoon Kim, a researcher with the Eterna project, to explain to us how we can do real science. Whatever age we are, whoever we are, wherever we are in the world, we can participate in this project. So we're going to get started with a live poll in the Zoom room. For our friends on Facebook, feel free to comment your answer. But our first live poll is, have you ever participated in a citizen science project before? And there are no wrong answers here. If you're unsure, just let us know. If the answer is no, that's okay. You're gonna have the opportunity to do Eterna, which is awesome. And if the answer is yes, feel free to let us know in the chat what projects you've done before. We'd be really interested in knowing. So we're gonna keep this up for just a second more. 3, 2, 1, and then Sam, I think we should close the poll. And what are our results? Oh my gosh, the majority are unsure. We have 1 yes and 1 no as well. That's great. We're glad you're all here. And our next poll is, we just want to know a little bit about you. So we want to know, are you an aspiring citizen scientist? Are you a parent of an aspiring citizen scientist? Are you an educator of any kind, a teacher, a troop leader, or more? Are you a librarian or part of a library staff? Are you just a bored person on the internet? Or none of these? Feel free to select any that align with you. We just really want to know. All right, we're going to keep it open for just a second more. And as a reminder, for those of you who are joining us on Facebook, feel free to let us know in the Facebook comments who you are and why you're dialing in today. All right, I think I'm going to have Sam close the poll. The majority, 67%, are aspiring citizen scientists. We also have some educators with us and some library staff members. Welcome. So now I'm going to pass the mic to Sam, who's going to talk about online events with the Newton Public Library.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Really appreciate having you here. This is actually our last official day of summer library program, and it's been a great summer. Great to end it with this awesome event that you guys are letting us be part of. We've actually, this is our 3rd one this week. We had NASA earlier, and that was really exciting, and also some talk about Kansas folklore. So coming up, we're going to continue to do online programs. We've got book discussions. Some of those book discussions are online, and anybody, if you're listening, whether you're in Newton or not, we'd be happy to have you join us for these book discussions. For the month of August, all 3 of our book discussions are focused on the African American experience. So you can find out more about that on our website, which you see there on the screen. We also have genealogy, local history, and photography programs every month, and those are online as well now, and you can access those wherever you are. Happy to have you. And then we've got special guests like SciStarter and all of us, and do soon. So the best place to find out about all that is our Facebook page, which some of you are watching on right now, or our website, newtonplks.org.
Great, thanks, Sam.
Yeah, thank you.
So to kick us off, I'm going to talk about citizen science. So citizen science is a collaboration between scientists and those of us who are curious, concerned, and motivated to make a difference. So at SciStarter, we define citizen science really broadly because we want it to be any way a volunteer can contribute to science and move science forward. So this can be everything from monitoring water quality to taking observations of the night sky, so going outside and saying what you see. It can be analyzing blood vessels in the brains of mice. There's a project called Stall Catchers, which some of you might know about. And it can be like Eterna, where you can participate online and contribute to RNA research. Citizen science is really broad. It encompasses every type of science. And if you want to get involved, you're in the right place. So the best way to do that for us is we really want you to make a SciStarter account. There are benefits to this. It helps you discover more projects. We believe in growing by connecting. So if you really enjoy, for example, monitoring light pollution and looking at the night sky, we think you might also enjoy getting outside during the day and discovering projects where you can do that. We want to help you turn your curiosity into impact. And we selected some projects for our Summer Reading Meet Citizen Science series that we thought would be really good for this community. So projects that address health and the environment, projects that you can do in a safe way while social distancing are projects you can do completely like from home, like Eterna. So we encourage you right now, if you're at a computer or you have your smartphone or if you have a tablet with you, to go to SciStarter.org/NLM and make a SciStarter account. You can make a SciStarter account and discover some health and environmental projects right on that page. So yeah, please go to SciStarter.org/NLM. And if you want to spend the next few minutes while I talk about some of the features on that page doing that, that would be awesome. So on the SciStarter.org/NLM page, you'll also find an Introduction to Citizen Science tutorial, which is about to become bilingual, so in English and Spanish. This tutorial tells you the what, the how, the who, and the why of citizen science. And it takes about 30 minutes to click through it. There are some quizzes built in and some videos and some other interactive features. And then at the very end, you get a certificate. We built this tutorial for a 5th grade reading level and up. So we wanted it to be something where people of all ages could go through it and get something out of it. Because citizen science is really it's not just for adults, it's not just for kids, it's for people at every stage in their life if they want to volunteer to move science forward. So if you have a friend who's like, what's the citizen science thing? We hope that you send them to SciStarter.org/NLM, and you can say, just do this tutorial. You'll understand all of it after you do it. And it's what can get you started. It gives you the tools you need to get started with citizen science and the knowledge you need to help you understand the best ways to participate and how you can join different projects. We're specifically talking about Eterna today, and we have a special guest, Dusun, who's going to share his expertise with us. Eterna allows you to solve puzzles to invent medicine. So they're trying to empower citizen scientists to do this work. And Dusun can explain it a lot better than I can. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to him. He's going to talk about his personal story, how he got where he is as part of the Imagine Your Story Citizen Science meets Summer Reading theme. And he's also going to talk about how to do the project and give you some background on what the project's discovered so far. So take it away, Dusun.
Can I actually start with, can you go back a slide? I would actually like to start by explaining at a very high level what Eterna hopes to achieve from a citizen science perspective. So as you'll see in the next slide, I actually trained as a professional scientist, but something I've always wondered was trying to lower the barrier to doing science for the greater public, which in this case would be citizen scientists. And the greatest barrier that we see for people who want to become scientists or want to go into science is access to a laboratory. And then also sort of the barriers in jargon that are used often in scientific literature as well as scientific text. So what we try to do in Eterna is translate an incredibly hard problem in biochemistry and synthetic biology, designing these RNA molecules and translate them into puzzles. And this level of abstraction essentially allows someone with no training in the science, no formal training in the sciences to participate in the scientific process by designing these puzzles on a computer screen. So that's the first bubble that you see on the left. And then the next bubble, what we do is we take your submissions and then we perform those experiments in laboratories by professional scientists at Stanford School of Medicine. And then we return the results back to players, which I'll hopefully share with you soon. And then we write publications that are vetted by professional scientists as well as the greater public on their rigor. And then also what we're sort of moving to in the future is players coming up with their own scientific hypotheses and being able to test those by making puzzles for other citizen scientists. So we're trying to sort of cultivate an ecosystem of citizen scientists that are feeding off of each other, much like what happens with professional scientists. All right, I can go on to the next slide now. Thank you. So just a little bit background on me, so I'm not just a floating head talking to you about this computer game. And this slide is supposed to show you that citizen scientists and scientists in general can come from any background and have formal training in almost anything. So I got my undergraduate degree in chemical engineering at the University of Texas at Austin, and where I was introduced to a field of research called synthetic biology. And synthetic biology is broadly concerned with altering or being able to engineer biological systems from scratch. I then moved on to graduate work at Northwestern University near Chicago, where I studied chemical and biological engineering, mostly focused on the biological engineering part. And my research focus was on this field called directed evolution, which aims to evolve new machines that carry out custom functions. And then it was through this work that I worked on these classes of machines called RNA machines, and to back out very, very, very far, and let's say to use a, I'll use a library analogy. So in biology, there are three sort of core concepts. It's called the central dogma of biology, and it goes from DNA to RNA to proteins. So the very central process in biology revolves around this central dogma, where DNA, RNA, and proteins, information sort of flows in that order to achieve a lot of biocatalysis. The analogy that I would make for RNA, so DNA is like the actual library where all the information is held. Yeah, and then RNA is like if you were to go check out a book from that library, and then you absorb that knowledge into your brain or your ideas, and then the protein is essentially, you can think of it as what you do with that knowledge from that book that you checked out at the library, right? So RNA serves as this sort of messenger molecule in transferring information from a central database like a library to you, citizen scientists who might go and do something with it, which is like a protein. So RNA is that sort of middle ground that transfers messages between this central database and your own knowledge database. So from my work on RNA machines at Northwestern, I, in light of the COVID pandemic, and a lot of the efforts on Eterna right now are on designing these vaccines against COVID-19, this pandemic that is going on in the world, and utilizing the power of citizen scientists on Eterna to design better mRNA therapeutics, specifically mRNA vaccines to fight SARS-CoV-2, the virus. And that position is at Stanford University right now, leading the Open Vaccine Initiative on Eterna. You can go to the next slide. Sorry. Thanks. And this is an overview of how Eterna works. So for those of you who might not be familiar with RNA you can think of as just a string of beads, and these beads have identities in it. So what we've done is abstract RNA from this rather complex biomolecule into essentially a string of colors. And there's 4 colors because there are 4 different types of beads or nucleotides of RNA. And players can go on eternagame.org and just try out different sequences for a given puzzle. And then it'll form different shapes. And then whenever it reaches a shape that you like or one that is defined by the puzzle, you will submit it into a public database. And other players, and you have votes too, obviously, can go vote on designs they like best. And what you can vote on is totally up to the player, like you would be, for a scientist. You can vote because you like the shape a lot. You can vote because you like the colors a lot. There's no hard, fast rule on how you can vote on these molecules. But players do vote, and they discuss amongst themselves very intensely, and a lot of campaigning happens for votes sometimes, you can imagine, so that your designs might get voted. The top voted designs are then synthesized and experimented upon by scientists at Stanford University. And also we have collaborations at Northwestern University and also other institutions that do experiments on these RNA molecules. So just from the top left to the bottom right, what has happened is an RNA molecule that a citizen scientist designed via a video game on your computer is now being synthesized, and cutting edge RNA biochemistry experiments are being performed at Stanford University. And what is really unique about Eterna and sort of baked into our structure is that the results of the experiments on the molecules that you designed as a citizen scientist are not just kept in the vault for professional scientists to work on, they're actually returned back to the players. So over time, you can imagine going around the circle multiple times and becoming iteratively better and better at RNA design as the project goes on. And this actually happens quite often. Our most veteran players are as good, if not better, at RNA design than, say, me, someone who traditionally formally trained as a scientist in this field. And over time, just like players come up with crazy good nuanced rules about video games, players on Eterna over time have become very apt at coming up with their own language to describe certain shapes, having design rules around how certain sequences and shapes are achieved. And then now there's sort of this own ecosystem that lives on the Eterna game of these design rules that now exist. The next slide, hopefully. Thank you. And then just to show off what sort of projects we've taken on, there are the thermodynamically perfect ribose switches are, that's a very technical way to describe it. What it really is are RNA molecules that can carry out computation. So can you get two RNA molecules to add digits together, for example? And then what that allows you to do is now take a lot of these parts, put them together to make calculators. But instead of calculating, let's say, numbers, can we get it to calculate whether you have a certain disease or not? So those are called diagnostics. So we've worked on projects where we get these ribose switches or dynamic RNA molecules that can give you a readout of, can it be responsive to this contaminant in the water, or can it be responsive to this certain RNA that might cause the disease? Another effort that we're working on that you might see on the top right is 3D designs for RNA. So something that we've done on Eterna is focus very heavily on 2D structure so that it can be rendered on a computer quite easily. But in real life, the abstraction that we've done to reduce this to a two-dimensional screen, or like a piece of paper or a computer screen, it actually doesn't, in real life, things aren't so flat. Things are actually existing in 3D structures. So solving an RNA puzzle is a lot less like, say, a maze that you might do on a piece of paper, or let's say Scrabble that you might play. It's actually more like a Rubik's Cube. So we're trying to sort of build up the abstraction of video games to encompass that 3D design space for RNA. And that is going to allow us to unlock a very different level of complexity. And on the bottom right, you see this project for a safer genomic editing technology. It's called Open Crispr. So for those of you who may not be familiar, CRISPR is this very up-and-coming gene editing technology that has many applications ranging from agriculture to human health. And it sort of relies on this very key RNA molecule called a guide RNA. One thing that we have to think about as we start to apply this to the world and society is, can we design very safe CRISPR gene editing systems that can be turned off in the event of adverse effects? So on Eterna, we've challenged players to design RNA molecules that can be responsive and immediately turned off if adverse events are observed. And on the bottom left, I'm showing off just a small collection of scientific publications. And to our knowledge, this is the first time, or we are the first citizen science project to do this at high throughput. So I think we're at about 20 or so scientific publications where data that was, backing up even more, RNAs that were designed by citizen scientists with no formal training were used in experiments and used to draw a fundamental insight about a research problem that has essentially stumped professional scientists for quite some time. So on Eterna, it's not about just making an observation or playing a video game. It's really about becoming a scientist and being able to form a hypothesis, test it on your own, and then refine that hypothesis over time. So we have papers, the paper that you see in the middle, the evidence of unusual poly-A RNA structure detected by high throughput chemical mapping. It sounds immensely complex maybe to someone who doesn't work in biochemistry, but what you might find shocking is that the entire paper in its entirety and all the authors on that paper were players of Eterna and not professional scientists. And to our knowledge, this is one of the few papers that were written entirely by citizen scientists that was recently accepted to and published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. So in Eterna, we're very, obviously these puzzles are very important to solve, and like these are exciting for professional scientists, but perhaps more exciting to us is sort of the broad participation into the world of scientific research that we afford to citizen scientists who are interested. And on the last slide, if you could switch slides, this is just a way to get involved. If you want to start playing Eterna, you can navigate to eternagame.org right now, make an account. You do have to be over the age of 13 for regulatory purposes, but anyone, literally anyone with a computer and an internet connection is eligible to start designing RNA molecules on Eterna. So eternagame.org is our official site. Our current project that you might see pop up multiple times is called Open Vaccine for COVID-19. So this is an initiative to design a safe mRNA vaccine that can be equitably distributed across the world and used to address the COVID-19 pandemic. And one very important part of the Open Vaccine project that we have going on is that all the discoveries we make will be openly available, so that anyone looking to make an mRNA vaccine will be available to use their findings that were enabled by citizen scientists who are submitting designs and to incorporate them into therapeutics that will go into clinical trials. We recently developed a mobile app that is live on both Google Play and iOS, so that you can play Eterna on your phone, whether you have an Android or an Apple phone. And then also, of course, you can also engage us on any of our social media channels, which are on the right. We actively monitor them and love interacting with people who are interested in getting involved. So please reach out to us with any questions, or we'll see you on eternagame.org.
Great. Thank you, Doosoon.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
And now we have the Q&A portion. So for our audience on both Facebook and in Zoom, feel free to put your questions in the chat or to put them in the comments. While you start thinking of those questions, I know that was Eterna is such a cool game. I know you're probably already playing it right now. We're going to have Sam ask Doosoon some questions about Imagine Your Story and about Eterna.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Doosoon. That's amazing, and it's amazing to hear that these citizen scientists have actually created a peer-reviewed paper, which I guess means that professional scientists have looked at this and determined that it really is something that contributes to scientific progress, right?
Yeah. That's, I mean, if you are in graduate school to get a PhD in a scientific field, that is your ultimate goal, is to publish a peer-reviewed paper. And what we've shown on Eterna is that anyone from anywhere with the internet connection and the computer are able to make discoveries in terms of rigor on par with any professional scientist that can be distributed to a peer-reviewed journal.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I did get on the Eterna game, and I would add, like, please, people that are watching here, go ahead and to type your questions in the chat on Facebook or on our Zoom room, and we'll put those questions in too. But what was I saying? Oh, yeah, I did kind of do the beginning. I think I was in kind of a tutorial mode. I guess just in terms of designing this game, how do you get something so complicated and turn it into something that at least it starts out feeling pretty accessible,
How do we do it? I mean, a lot of principles in game design and abstraction. I think a lot of what we focus on is focused on science communication. So there's this misconception that scientists are these naturally incredibly gifted people who sit in the ivory tower and like speak a special language, and they're indebted with this inherent ability to do so. And that can be further from the truth, right? Like, the reason I got into science and the reason I am able to have any success in science probably goes back to when I was like in elementary school. I like doing puzzles, not like complicated puzzles, but just like any sort of puzzles. And then what you learn over time is that even professional scientists and incredibly good scientists, what they do is they take this very complex problem and they abstract it down to simple ways that they can understand the problems themselves. So in Eterna, we thought about citizen science in a way that made us citizen scientists. So from a completely unbiased perspective, without the formal training, how are we going to sort of translate this relatively complex problem in biophysics and biochemistry to something that can be easily displayed on the computer screen? So it was a lot of iterations of just game design and also a lot of testing. And I think the real power and the real benefit of what we were able to achieve on Eterna is we were able to recruit a really broad audience. So there's actually very few formally trained scientists who are avid players of Eterna. The bulk majority of our player base is just accountants or high school students or college students studying marketing, right? Like, there's these what many would consider 5 years ago very random, unrelated topics to science and technology. But what we've discovered is that that's totally false. If you like puzzles and you like playing games, over time, your sort of brain is able to adapt to these rather complex problems and be able to abstract away the principles that you need to. So we focus a lot on accessibility. So something that we have focused on is developing a mobile app so people can play it on their phones. So no longer is this very complex paper you have to go and understand. It's just a puzzle that you can play on your phone, or something that you can play with your kids that helps them get the introduction to relatively complex scientific problems.
Yeah, cool. So that answers. So it is available on phones. That's one question. And then I see Andre asked, I guess, you know, how did they? That's pretty impressive for a citizen scientist to go beyond playing the Eterna game and actually, as a citizen, take that initiative to write a scientific paper. You know, they must. I guess that's kind of what you're talking about, you know, demythologizing being a scientist. You know, you can go down that road. You know, anybody can to a certain extent, I guess. So,
yeah. So to ask Andre's question, perhaps more specifically, so the question is, how do they write the study based on their data? So we had to play around. So whenever you get, you know, data out of these experiments, they're quite complex. So we focus a lot on a question that we ask in every developer meeting for Eterna. And this developer meeting has software engineers as well as professional scientists who are experimentalists. Professor Riju Das, who has created and led the Eterna project, is always at these meetings, and as well as researchers like myself. We always ask, how do we return the data to players such that it will be useful for them? And then to the second part of Andre's question, I mean, how did it come together in practical terms? So it's a lot of trial and error. You know, these developer meetings, we hypothesize what might work. We return the data in a format to players that we think will be useful to them. And the players, because we've sort of nurtured this ecosystem of very honest feedback and us listening to citizen scientist feedback, what often happens is we'll try something out. We'll immediately get feedback from our players to say, no, what you just gave us is total garbage. Here's what we need from you. And then I think the key there is to listen to the citizen scientists and take their feedback very seriously, and to dedicate a lot of effort into making sure that their voices are heard and their participation is rewarded with work on our end to translate the results of these experiments into the sort of a digestible way that anyone can access it. And, you know, in terms of like practically writing the paper, we give them access to, we connect the citizen scientists directly with researchers who are working in that area. And this of course helps because Professor Doss runs a phenomenal group at Stanford who studies this in detail. Or we will reach out to other academic labs who have expertise in these areas and connect them to professional scientists that might be able to help frame the discoveries they've made into a manuscript that they can publish. So it was a lot of just, you know, having an open line of communication and making sure we listen to them, and we're able to sort of translate their findings in video game terms now back to the scientific terms that we might be using to publish a paper. But, you know, in the beginning stages, there's a lot of things that you might even not think of. So a lot of reviewers said, these seem to be video game usernames. Is that on purpose? And we're like, well, yeah, they're video game players on a citizen science platform. Like that's what they're gonna, you know, their designs are assigned to a video game username and not necessarily this person who has an affiliation at a university. So there are like these unforeseen challenges that we've dealt with and we've sort of worked out over time. But it's a lot of trial and error and just listening to the citizen scientists and just watching them develop as really, really proficient professional scientists, to be frank.
So I have another question. I'm wondering if are there supercomputers out there that are kind of trying to crunch through different possible RNA structures, and how does this approach complement that or compete with something like that?
Yeah. So the beauty is it's sort of how good the human brain is at recognizing patterns. So this is sort of the central theme of Eterna is are players working on problems that can be just completely enumerated upon by supercomputers, let's say. And why would we want to tackle this problem through citizen scientists instead of just employing a bunch of supercomputers? And the simple answer is, for a lot of these problems, the reasons they're so tough is because it is nearly impossible to enumerate through all the possibilities via a computer algorithm. So just to give you an example, one of the vaccine candidates for SARS-CoV-2 is about, let's say, 1,000 nucleotides long. So this is a hypothetical situation, but for 1,000 nucleotide long mRNA, which is not very long actually in terms of how big of a protein that can make, the number of possibilities that mRNA can take on in terms of sequence and shape is greater. It's like 1,000 times greater than every star in the galaxy. I think the number of stars in the galaxy. So the possibilities are just astronomical in terms of trying to enumerate through all of it. But what citizen scientists are so good at, and I think what people are inherently so good at, is having a starting point, just any starting point, and then being able to recognize a pattern and apply that pattern to their next round of designs. So these are problems that, it's not like these are problems that we can easily solve by a computer, but we're giving to citizen scientists as a way of, being more inclusive. I mean, there's all those social benefits of opening it up to citizen scientists and making science more accessible. But from a practical problem solving perspective, these are not problems that we can solve via computer algorithms alone. What is beautiful about some of the initiatives that we're taking on is taking what these citizen scientists are discovering and integrating it into algorithms for computers to then better narrow down what search spaces they might be navigating. So in a lot of the recent challenges, it's been a lot of cooperation between the rules discovered by citizen scientists and the computer algorithms that we're coding up to hopefully address some of the shortcomings of these predictive algorithms.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so what would you tell someone who wants to participate in Eterna but might be nervous about getting started?
Oh man, I mean, this is more broadly applicable. Trying anything new is obviously quite nerve-wracking, especially if it happens to be a very challenging problem, for example. But my biggest advice to them is you just have to go online and make an account and solve a couple puzzles. And the beautiful thing is, you almost are never doing Eterna in isolation. We have a chat box that is constantly there on the right side of the screen that you can access and ask players for help. And there are players who are online pretty much around the clock because we have players from Europe who tune in, as well as players from every time zone in the US. So, really a community about building new scientists. So you're never going to be alone playing on Eterna if you would like. So, the worst thing you can do is you'll make an account, you do a few puzzles, and you don't like it, and you don't go back. But the best thing that can happen is that you, from any background whatsoever, discover that you can be an incredibly good citizen scientist and a professional scientist if it leads to it. So I would encourage them to just sign up and just play a couple games. Think about it this way: you can spend that time playing Candy Crush, and if you want to play Candy Crush, you absolutely should. It's a very addicting game. It's very relaxing. You can spend that time playing Candy Crush, or you can spend that time designing a vaccine that could save people's lives in COVID-19 as far as future pandemics. I think the upside is so high that you should absolutely go try it.
So I think we have time for 3 more questions. Sam, do you have any more questions you wanted to ask?
I was kind of curious. You talk about the mRNA vaccine. I think that I read that am I right that this would be the first RNA-based vaccine? Or
yes. So the technology has been around for quite a while. I would say like 20 or so years, but there is not a clinically approved mRNA therapeutic that is out on the market. So if we are successful during this pandemic to put out an mRNA vaccine against SARS-CoV-2, that will be the first instance in the world of a clinically approved mRNA vaccine and therapeutic.
That's amazing. I have a quick question. What's something about Eterna that has surprised you?
At least for me, so Eterna has been around since 2011. And I only joined really full time in like March or so. As a response to this COVID pandemic. I think what surprised me is the power of citizen science to distill very, very in-depth design rules. So for example, and to put it in perspective, I'm a PhD student in synthetic biology. Let's say I spend every waking hour for a week, which is about 170 hours, thinking about a single problem, right? And this is that is not including sleep time. Like if I spent every single hour in a week, I would spend 170 hours or so on this problem. But what we have on Eterna are maybe 170 people spending 1 hour, but then talking about amongst each other what they're finding, right? Like the multiplicative nature of scientific findings really accelerates the amount of progress and like sort of design rules that you might glean from Eterna. So I always underestimate the power of many people working together to solve a grand challenge. More times than not, I think that is the more powerful way for scientific innovation, not necessarily a single expert scientist working on a problem for a long time. So and then when you go talk to the players, you know, there are hundreds of thousands of players. They've developed such an intricate web of knowledge in a land so removed from scientific jargon that, you know, we have to work to translate the video game language back to scientific words. So the amount of scientific insights that players have with no formal training in science is absolutely amazing.
That's awesome. And it looks like we have time actually for 2 more questions because I love this. Sam, do you have any other questions?
Well, no, I mean, we've got a couple questions in the Q&A box here, I guess. Oh, just one that Andre asked is how is an mRNA vaccine different from the kind of vaccines we're more familiar with?
Okay, I'll give an example for like the flu vaccine, since everyone hopefully should be getting the flu vaccine every year. It's very effective at preventing the flu. So here's how flu vaccines are made. You identify, so in the US, we identify, the WHO identifies endemic strains of the flu that are flu strains that are going around in different parts of the world, often the Southern Hemisphere, that look like they're going to spread to the US and be widespread. So they will identify a couple strains of the flu vaccines, of flu strains. So these are named like H, a number, N, a number. So you might have heard of the H1N1 flu pandemic, H3N1, and so forth and so on. So the WHO will identify a flu strain that's going around the part of the world, and they'll say, all right, we probably have about 6 months until this gets to the US. Let's start making vaccines. And I'm not kidding. The way they do it is by growing up. The government owns, specifically BARDA, they own a large swath of chickens that are hidden away in strategically secretive locations. And these chickens lay a bunch of eggs. So there's like millions of chicken eggs sitting somewhere for vaccine making. And what they do is they give the virus to these eggs that chickens have laid. They incubate millions and millions of chicken eggs. They break the eggs open. They collect the proteins that virus has made in the chicken eggs. And then they give that out as vaccines, right? So actually a surprising connection to Kansas, Rick Bite, who was the leader of BARDA, this organization responsible for making flu vaccines, or like having a supply of flu vaccines, I believe was from Kansas. And he grew up on a farm and was like very intrigued about avian or like bird science, let's say. And then that led him into the world of immunology and making vaccines, because so much of flu comes from birds. That was an aside. But so for flu vaccines, you rely on this swath of million eggs to make the vaccine supply for the US population. What mRNA vaccines do is go back to the step before you put it into eggs. And you know via genomic sequencing what the sequence of that mRNA is that will make the protein that you need, that is the vaccine.
Okay.
Right? So what you can do is you can take that mRNA molecule, and instead of relying on a million or so chicken eggs to make it for you, you can give that molecule directly to the human. And your own cells will make the protein that are the vaccines and develop an immune response to it. So what's wonderful about mRNA vaccines is, one, they don't rely on these sort of unpredictable cell cultures or these supply of secret US government chicken eggs, but instead you can make them in a chemical reaction in a large vat and distribute it very effectively through the population.
So you are the chicken egg.
You are the chicken egg for vaccine production. Yes. Right.
Well, that's
This
really
is
cool.
another question about the GENIAC bioinformatics trainings. So I'm not so, yeah, of course, thanks, Andre. I'm not so familiar with GENIAC. Looking at it, I think what is happening is on GENIAC, citizen scientists and students go through this problem called gene annotation. So when you sequence a genome, you actually don't know what genes are identified by a computer, and it actually takes some human eye to say, like, this is probably a real gene, this is probably not a real gene. So Eterna in many ways is also like that, yes. So we return a massive amount of experimental data and ask the players to cull through that data. Input from James. Basically, students are trained to use bioinformatics training to prove if the gene was called correctly by the computer. Yeah, so this is a lot like that, in that we return to citizen scientists and video game players all the experimental data that we get with maybe some seeds of hypotheses about what might be going on. But players will actually go through line by line, nucleotide by nucleotide, and say, I think you're right. Or often they say, no, I think your hypothesis is totally wrong. Here's what we see, and here's the observation we saw in the experimental data. So, you know, for a data set that would take me, let's say, a week of no sleep to go through, online community of 1,000 people can go through it via, via just looking at small chunks of it in incredible granular detail that computers or, let's say, myself, a professional scientist, could not do.
Great. All right. For our last question, Sam, what should we ask?
Well, I guess let's see. I guess is this something that you've had maybe like high school science classes participate as a group or stuff like that?
We have it, and that's something that we have sort of realized the power of, and we're working to move Eterna into an educational curriculum. So if you're watching and you work with high school students or college students even, please send me an email and I'll be more than happy to set up that partnership. So I can say right now that we are actively working on a partnership with Prairie View A&M University, which is a historically Black college in Houston, Texas, or Prairie View, Texas, which is right by Houston, to integrate Eterna into their scientific curriculum for this coming fall, where a lot of students might have to do remote learning to supplement their scientific curriculum. So yeah, if you are a part of any sort of education with high school scientists, even middle school, we are happy to try to form these partnerships to make Eterna more accessible for educational purposes.
It looks like someone in our chat is really interested in reaching out. So what's the best way for someone to do that, to get involved?
Oh,
high school students.
James, I will type my email into the chat, and anyone, all the attendees, feel free to email me. And
Great.
You can just directly email me and we'll work with you. That sounds great.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And for our friends watching on Facebook, Eterna is super responsive on social media too. So if you tag @Eterna on like Twitter or Facebook or anything like that, you guys have always been great about sharing stuff, like promoting this event. So if someone wanted to get in touch with you on Twitter, would that be a good way to do it? Yeah, totally. If you reach out to us on any of our platforms, the developer team gets every notification, and it's probably me that'll respond. So yeah, just send it our way, and we're happy to work with you. Great. All right. So thank you so much, Dusun and Sam. Yeah. Now we're going to have Tess talk about All of Us.
Hi, my name's Tess Wilson. I work with the network of the National Library of Medicine, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the All of Us research program, which is one of the sponsors of today's program. So the mission of the All of Us research program is to accelerate health research and medical breakthroughs, which enables individualized prevention, treatment, and care. So the goal of the program is to help researchers understand more about why people get sick and also why people stay healthy. So by looking for these patterns, researchers can learn more about what affects people's health. So the All of Us research program aims to build one of the largest, most diverse data sets of its kind for health research, with 1 million or more volunteers nationwide who will sign up to share their information over time. So it's a really widespread, exciting, huge project. And the goals of the All of Us and National Library of Medicine partnership are to increase the capacity of public library and community-based organization staff to improve health literacy digital literacy, and participation in scientific research, which includes citizen science. Next slide, please. And so if you're new to the idea of precision medicine, it's one way that researchers are looking to advance the ability to serve the public health needs of all people. All of Us is a precision medicine study, but what does precision medicine mean? It's a new way of looking at health treatment and prevention as being designed for individuals. So that way doctors can take into account a person's lifestyle, environment, and biological makeup to figure out the best treatment for that individual. Next slide, please. So the neat thing is that we already use precision medicine in some ways. A really great example of this is eyeglass prescriptions. Eye doctors can tell us exactly which lenses will work best for us, but when we visit our regular doctor, they may be more likely to prescribe a treatment or prevention that works well for most people. But we aren't always most people, are we? So when a lot of people pitch in to help with this kind of research program, we build a large national database to help eliminate one-size-fits-all medicine. Next slide, please. And the NLM and All of Us have also prioritized citizen science as a focus for engagement activities, and through libraries and our other community-based organization partners, through citizen science and crowdsourcing, NNLM hopes to engage communities in addressing societal needs and accelerating biomedical science, technology, and innovation. We started this work with our partnership with SciStarter to create an online tutorial, provide opportunities to engage in citizen science activities, and through libraries, as well as picking curated citizen science projects that align with the All of Us engagement priority areas. Collaborations between communities and researchers builds the capacity to address problems and also meet research goals, as you found out today. Community participation in research also builds trust between NNLM and the communities we serve. And we're committed to increasing access to citizen science resources to diverse populations, and that we can only do with help through libraries and community organizations. So the NLM and All of Us are really pleased to provide this opportunity for you to engage with and learn more about citizen science. We really hope you'll stay actively involved and participate in future events. All the upcoming events are open to the public, and they're all really exciting, all these Q&A webinars. Next slide, please. And one of the cool parts about this research program is that just about everyone in the US can participate as long as you're over 18. So taking research to the community is the best part about all this, and All of Us does that. And the last slide. You can find out more about how you as an individual or how you and your organization or library can participate at joinallofus.org/NLM. Or contact me or Michael, who also works with NNLM. We are both always happy to talk about ways that NNLM or All of Us could connect with you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tess. And now Sam's going to talk about how people can stay involved with Newton Public Library.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all again for bringing this to Newton virtually. It's been really interesting, and I learned a lot. Yeah, of course, you can email us, library@newtonplks.org. Our phone number's there on the slide. We're also active on Facebook and Instagram and the website. So check that out. And of course, you can stop in. We've got COVID-19 safety measures in place for in-person visits. So I hope that everybody watching will just, summer library program is coming to a close, but we're going to continue to do online stuff, and we've got a lot going on for the next coming months.
Thanks, Sam. And also, people can find the field guide to citizen science through Hoopla, right? And also, I think you said Cloud Library as well.
The easiest for Newton Public Library patrons is going to be to get on Hoopla, and we have that field guide to citizen science on demand, no wait lists or anything like that. So.
Yeah, and so everyone who's watching, the Field Guide to Citizen Science is a book that was co-authored by Darlene Cavalier, the founder of SciStarter, and we really recommend that one as, you're getting started with citizen science and learning more about different projects. That one is a good one to give you kind of a lay of the land of all the different projects that are available. And we hope that you use Hoopla and your library e-media. If you're not from if you're not from Kansas, or you're not using the Newton County Public Library System, I bet your library system has one of these e-reads. So please check it out. Keep reading and keep doing citizen science. And you can actually find a bunch of projects on that SciStarter.org/NLM page I told you about earlier. So Eterna is featured on that page, and we also have a number of other projects that we've spotlighted through different summer reading programs. So you can make your SciStarter account, do the tutorial, and access instructions for all these different projects on SciStarter.org/NLM. And I think there are about 10 events left in our summer reading series, so throughout the next month and the first week of September. And the theme is Imagine Your Story. So if you enjoyed this event and learning a little bit about Do Soon and the project that he works on, Eterna, we hope that you join other events to learn more about different citizen science projects. So our final call to action for you all is, of course, go to SciStarter.org/NLM to do the Eterna project and discover it and get those instructions, but also to take our survey. So go to tinyurl.com/summer reading 3 participants, and it's case sensitive, so capital S, capital R, and capital P. And if Robin or Tess could drop that in the chat, that'd be awesome. I really hope you all fill out this survey. It helps me know how well I'm doing, and it helps me help our partners put on engaging presentations for you all that help you move science forward. So it looks like we're right at the end of the hour. Any closing thoughts from our panelists as people pull up that survey and get started?
Well, this is a little bit off. Well, this is a little bit of a tangent. I don't. Have any of you seen the old sci-fi movie, The Last Starfighter? It's a movie where there's this guy. He's really good at playing this spaceship video game, and he's so good that the aliens come down and basically kidnap him and tell him that he has to be their fighter pilot for their space war. So it's like kind of, you know, you start out playing a video game and then all of a sudden you're doing real science. So anyway, that's kind of a pop culture reference.
Anybody in the audience heard of that movie before? Or any of our panelists, have you seen it?
Yeah, I would encourage the Eterna team to watch it. It's
that sounds a lot like what we do in Eterna, except like way more voluntary.
I'm surprised I haven't seen it, honestly. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Cool. Any other closing thoughts from our panelists? Do Soon, do you have a call to action for us or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, just thanks so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be involved with SciStarter. I think what you're doing is so wonderful, not only for Eterna, of course, but like all the different citizen science efforts that you support. And thanks so much for the Newton Public Library for sort of bringing us together with this cool audience. So yeah, I just say, you know, definitely, you know, it's just really fun to go online and be able to connect with a new community and to become a scientist. Being a scientist is like a really fun thing. It's not this very shrouded in mystery, tough thing where you're just banging your head against the wall. It's really about interacting with people, making new discoveries, and working at something that you can improve that over time. Yeah, but thanks so much for having me.
Great. All right, well, I think we'll end it here unless we have anything else.
Well, this will be archived on the Newton Public Library Facebook page. So if you know somebody else that should come and watch it, please share it with them.
Great. All right, thanks everybody. Don't forget to fill out that survey, please, please, please. For anyone who's watching on Facebook or who is in our Zoom room, please fill out that survey. And I hope everyone has a great Friday. Thanks for spending some time with us. And we'll see you online. I'll see you in the Eterna chat box. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
All right.